All right, you bunch of yahoos, strap yourselves in for another episode of Dan and Don's Toxic Masculinity.
In other words, shut up, sit up, and pay attention. And welcome back to another episode of Toxic Masculinity, where we are here to entertain, offend, and defend anyone and everyone who we decide to on that particular day, and won't let a few facts get in the way of a good old story. We are two crotchety old farts that woke up this morning and still identified as males with testosterone. Can you believe that? Without further ado, my cohort in crime, the infamous mustache man himself, Don the Predator Fry, and I, his trusted cohort, Dan the Beast Severin here. And we don't have Quinn as the cameo. She is missing in action, but rest assured she will show up here again. And today's guest needs really no introduction. A former amateur wrestler, cage fighter, and some coach of some of the greatest MMA fighters ever. We have today, we have Pat Miletich in the house.
Hi guys, how you doing, Dan and Don?
Good, Pat. How you doing, partner?
So again, as we were stating earlier, you're pulling the Dan Severn audio where you're simply driving down the road. You're conducting one set of business while doing something else. So you're making me misty out here, Pat.
I'm in the passenger seat, luckily, so I'm good. But no, I'm still fighting gravity.
Yeah, that gravity's a bitch. It's winning at my place.
Don, I figured out finally that you gotta buy gravity boots and sleep upside down, and then it starts to reverse it over time.
Well, that didn't work for my ex. She slept upside down in the closet every night, without gravity boots.
Oh my. Well, that Don, he comes up with some of them zingers here right now. So Pat, I mean, you've been in the news lately in the aspect that you're going to be fighting again. Can we? I mean, I definitely. I mean, that's I'm going to talk about the current sets, but then I'll go back to you got a phenomenal past record here of just what you've done in your own personal MMA career and a lot of athletes that you worked with. But tell us about when this came together and why.
Yeah, well, to be honest with you, Dan and Don, a couple of years back when all the lockdowns were going on and all of that stuff, I'm a big adamant believer in natural health and a lot of stuff like that. And, I had healed myself from severe respiratory disease, something that I had my entire childhood. I did research and ended up healing myself, and that's the only reason I ever won a world title. And I used that same formula, the same organic, biological, natural existing antioxidants on my athletes to give them extraordinary, different level endurance, and then just taught them how to fight. So that's a formula that, is something that's essential for human health. So my understanding and having done research on a lot of these treatments over all the years is something I've been doing for over a quarter of a century. That started 10 years even after I healed myself of very severe disease. And that's, like I say, the only reason I was able to become successful. So I was coming at things a little bit differently back then, and this is a long story short. I'm trying to make it short, but when they locked us all down, I had a different viewpoint, of course. And so my good friend Michael Nunn, who was the best pound for pound boxer in the world for 4 years, and he's from Davenport, Iowa, right next door to Bettendorf, where I'm from, and we decided to.
Is he a light heavyweight?
He was middleweight, and then light heavyweight. But he was many-time world champion, and back when Sugar Ray Leonard, Duran, all those, none of them would fight him. He was a little bit younger than them, but none of them would fight him. They knew what was going to happen. He was incredible. And so anyway, we did that match with each other in Davenport, Iowa, to bring out our community and bring everybody together. You got to remember that there was a lot of rioting, burning cities, all kinds of craziness. And he and I, as friends, decided to do this to really bring our community together and educate citizens that, if you decided to, it was possible to go ahead and take your freedom back, which everybody did. We had, 5,000 people show up during a lockdown when there was that weekend, that night, there was no athletic events in the entire planet. We were literally, I think, almost the only one that was taking place. And we did that for a purpose. And Michael and I had no intentions of knocking each other out or anything like that. Well, we swatted each other around, but ultimately it was for a purpose. And this time, because I haven't had a desire to hurt another human being in 30 years, So when the gentleman I'm fighting, Mike Jackson, and I were friends, we worked together at the LFA and other organizations, and I cornered him against CM Punk at the United Center in Chicago. We got along very well. And then when all the craziness, the lockdowns and the violence started, he started really changing his rhetoric to be very extreme and kind of canvassing language about certain groups of people. And I would confront him. I'd say, dude, you're not the guy that I know. I don't know what your problem is and why you're being like this. But burning your neighbor's business is not the answer.
No.
Well, I happened to go to Washington, D.C. with my podcast partner and some other people just to observe what was going on January 6th in Washington, D.C. Of course, we did nothing wrong.
Nobody did. Nobody did except the other side killed a gal, but they sweep that underneath the carpet.
But ultimately, he wrote an article that was titled "Pat Miletich Supports Domestic Terrorism and White Supremacy." Well, that
Wow.
in a roundabout way, to say the least, it was a very personal attack, character assassination, and ultimately cost me my broadcasting job. And so, I sent him text and said, I tell you what, we've got some business to discuss when I see you, because what you did was wrong. And that's, the best way to say it. And he basically said, because he's in his mid-30s, whatever, I'll walk the dog with your old ass. And I said, okay, let's make a date. So we made a date for October 14th coming up here next month, and a month or whatever. And we're going to fight in Davenport, Iowa, at the River Center, and people can get the fight at cageaggression.tv. They can pay for it. But the purpose that I see here is not just my individual situation where somebody conducted this operation of trying to destroy my life, but more than anything else, this is for all the active military that had to decide between serving their country and taking an experimental treatment, and all the people that lost their jobs because of it, all the people that lost their businesses, and all of the things that have happened economically in this nation, which we said on my podcast numerous times, that if you close your business and everybody follows through with this, you're literally imploding our monetary system, and we're going to pay a severe price for it. You didn't have to be a master's in economics or a PhD in economics to understand the simplicity of this plan. So anyway, all those people that have dealt with the en masse cancel culture is what was conducted, this operation over the past 3.5 years. This is for all the people that have suffered through this, because I know your frustrations. This affected me directly. And on October 14th, I'm going to go out and take care of business. Even though I'm in my mid-50s and he's in his mid-30s, I'm gonna take care of this guy. And it's not about beating him up.
What style of fighting is it, Pat?
He's a better striker than he is a wrestler or anything like that. But ultimately, again, this isn't about beating him up.
Is it MMA? Is it MMA or boxing?
MMA.
Okay.
Yeah. But so, like I say, this is, I never have the desire to injure another human being in my life. I mean, my life has shifted to full-time the soil situation in our country, which is our soil's been killed by synthetic chemical farming. I don't blame the farmers. They're just doing what they were told. And Americans' health is being destroyed by, just simply 40 million acres of lawn care, putting, synthetic chemicals all over your lawn. Well, that's the water everybody's drinking. If there's any wonder why disease and hormonal imbalance and mental illness is exploding in America, it's not because we're weaker genetically. It's because of our environment that's affecting us, right? So that's the sort of stuff that I focus on, is helping people not only how to heal your soil and how to grow food biologically with no chemicals, but also about human health and how people can be addressing this and making their life better. That's my focus, is helping people, not hurting people. So again, like I say, this is not about beating up Mike Jackson. It's about educating people.
No, well said there, Pat. I mean, it's a lot of people when they they hear that you come from a an MMA fighting background, they don't realize how articulate people can be, and that's where you're using your brain. It's not as a punching bag, but you got to be able to train properly, train safely, because when the days of competition are finally behind you, you have to live in this body. From all the damage that you may have taken in the sport of competition. Whereas, I mean, even then, if you look at like a sport like boxing, the coach might say, "Here, Pat, put on this headgear. That way, you're not going to get cut. You won't get your nose broke. No teeth will be knocked out. You throw in this mouthpiece, but you're still taking the percussion each time that you get hit, even if they're hitting you with a boxing glove and you're wearing a headgear onto it. There's still that gray matter is being sloshed around, and you'll see, like a sport of boxing has been around, for 100 plus years, so you see easily some of the results of these boxers that have been in the game for a long time. They have signs of CTE, they have signs of Alzheimer's, dementia, all seeping in, and I mean, to look at. Again, you've got such a story type of career, because just of all the different athletes that you have worked with, all the different camps that you've trained different great fighters. So your track record speaks for itself, for not only for what you've done for yourself as a competitor, but what you've done with other athletes as well. I'm really intrigued with what you've done here when you said that you healed yourself. The research that you did, because a lot of people don't realize that if they do eat real foods, consume real herbs, spices, things of that nature, that they can do things. They always think they need to go see that doctor and take that pill. It's always like, take this subscription. This, where usually at the end of time, when life comes to an end, I always say that look at a person's medicine cabinet and count the different prescriptions that they were on. Look at their bedside and count how many additional prescriptions are laying right there bedside. Did they pass because of natural causes, or was it due to a chemical cocktail of just one too many, or did they again, they're losing their thought process? Did they take one application, 2, 3, 4, or just got tired of it altogether? So
yeah, that's the thing is, while I never suffered from the symptoms of concussions. I've never been unconscious from sparring with pro boxers, kickboxers, MMA guys, anything like that. But at the same time, I have to understand that, for basically a quarter of a century, every day I was in the gym working with fighters. I mean, I've retired from coaching quite a while back, but I never took any weeks off unless it was that rare vacation during the Christmas holiday or whatever. So, I was sparring every week. I was wrestling every week. I was, getting kicked and punched and thrown down. And, of course, that's since childhood. But so I think I definitely am not the same person I was when I started. I do have some anxiety issues. maybe a little bit of short-term memory stuff where I really have to stay on my schedule. But overall, my retention of information that I consider valuable, is, I think, spot on for the most part. But I do recognize too early on that I was training with older boxers, older kickboxers, and I would listen to them talk and lose their train of thought easily and things like that. And I really started paying attention because I didn't want to be that guy. I didn't want to have the deliberate wars and take the punishment and physical abuse in fights that a lot of these other guys have. So that, at least was paying attention. But back to your subject on, the prescription drugs and things, where I try to appeal to people is on a couple different fronts. It's, when a plant is sick, because I work in the biological and organic agriculture world, teaching farmers how to grow food without chemicals, is when a plant is sick, it's always the environment, right? It's either not enough water, not enough sun, some sort of chemical imbalance in the soil, whatever it is, it's always the environment. And humans have to understand that we're the exact same. And our environmental toxins, the billions of pounds of petroleum-based fertilizers and pesticides, herbicides, fungicides that are thrown down to sterilize our soil, because when you grow synthetic plants synthetically, I should say, corn, beans, wheat, anything, well, those plants are very sick, and nature will kill anything that is sick. So you have to sterilize the soil. You have to kill everything in the soil to make sure that those plants survive and you can harvest. And by doing that, healthy soil has over a ton of just microorganisms in it, 1 acre. Now it's less than 100 pounds, and most of that is genetically modified microorganisms. And conversely, those are the microorganisms that are supposed to be in our gut to help us correctly digest food, absorb nutrients, all those different things. And then you add in the heavy metals and chemicals in those products that are ending up in our water, and we're seeing the detrimental impact. So when people get sick, we don't say that there's any such thing as disease. It's just different manifestations of inflammation that are caused by these impurities trapped in the cells of these innocent people. So then they go to an expert in a white lab coat. He looks at their symptoms, looks in a book for symptoms, and then it tells him what synthetic chemical product to write you a prescription for. So they just give you more synthetic chemicals to either mask the symptoms or numb you or whatever it is. So that's where we're at right now. And I think a lot of people are waking up to that fact that they want to get away, want to get out of that system. And we just offer them the option that there are products and substances out there that can remove these chemicals and heavy metals out of your body and fix your gut bacteria so that you can, have a good quality of life.
Yeah, well, just you said, just the gut alone. I mean, a lot of people have got a lot of things that are taking place inside their stomach, and for digestion problems, or even for the fact that they can't do good bowel movements and things of that nature. I mean, I go back to the days of the first time I can remember of ever going to an old farm auction. There was a piece of machinery I'd never seen before, because I was young. I was probably, I don't know, maybe 10, 12 years of age, somewhere in that neighborhood. I'm there with my father, my grandfather, and I asked my dad. I said, "Pops, well, what's that?" And he says, "Oh, that's a manure spreader." And my grandfather says, he looks at my father and says, "No, son." He says, "That's called the politician." and I never understood that. I never understood that joke until years later, when you start realizing, politics is the nature. And I go, "Oh, Granddad Severn, he was right. He was spot on. The manure spreader was called the politician, just spreading shit."
Yeah, that's for sure. And I think everybody's waking up to that fact a lot more too, And my significant other, who's a brilliant woman, she's a motivational speaker and mindset coach, and she makes the statement that she's not Democrat or Republican. She's merely sensible, and
Yeah.
that's the best way to be.
Yeah. Well, again, that's where I've said this before with between Don and myself, that when you're finally down to the last couple candidates, you just want to go up to the microphone and just say, which one of you two assholes is going to fuck up the world the least? Because do I really like either one of you? No. But I'm left with you two as my choices. So which one of you retards is going to screw up the world the least? So, and that's sad. And because again, they make all these big political promises, but who actually ever delivers on the goods? That's the bad part. And again, I think you should be held accountable for what you promised and what did you deliver. And that's not happening. And I think people should be, they should be stripped of their wealth because they didn't come through, and they should be in prison, not these luxurious places. I'm talking about hard prison time, making license plates, things of that nature. But their
Well,
wealth
I
should
think
be taken away as well.
Just the one simple thing of understanding that none of them have ever passed term limits tells you exactly it's just a racket, right?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. They make the laws, so they're going to make it in their benefit. I mean, well, you get elected for one term and you get retirement for the rest of your life.
Yeah, I mean, if I wanted to sell a bunch of guns legally, I would become a U.S. senator and then have diplomatic immunity. So
right.
they couldn't search the shipping containers full of AK-47s that I was selling to the Ukrainians or whoever else I was.
Right. What does cayenne pepper do for your body, Pat? Going back into the nutrition aspects.
It's an anti-inflammatory. It's very good. I mean, farmers will, on top of chicken feed, sprinkle cayenne pepper flakes, actually. Help with digestion and inflammation, things like that. I mean, dandelions are anti-inflammatory. They help reduce blood pressure. Every weed that they tell you has to be killed in your yard, literally almost all of them are actually the original medicinal plants that we actually need. That's thousands of years of plant medicine that was replaced by Rockefeller's petroleum-based garbage.
Yeah.
Well, have you been doing anything special there for the upcoming boxing match? I mean, obviously, conditioning is always something good that you need to be doing. So, how many rounds are you supposed to be going on this?
This is a 3 5-minute MMA match, and I've been training with some real good boxers, some kickboxers, and then some real good Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belts, and then also wrestlers. And I tell you, for being in my mid-50s, I actually feel pretty dang good for having not really trained for a fight, obviously, for a long time. And so, the weight's coming off great. I feel good. My endurance is up. My timing feels good. Power feels good. And, so I feel pretty good. There's nothing he can hit me with that's going to hurt me. He's not going to out wrestle me. So, I mean, he has a very slim chance of really doing anything with me. I just need to go out and do the work and remove him from the cage, so to speak, right?
Did you play any other sports as a child, and what made you want to get into MMA?
I played football. Football was actually my favorite sport, along with wrestling. I wrestled. It's kind of funny. All my brothers were 6'5", and I assumed I was going to be at least playing linebacker for the University of Iowa, if not, in the NFL. I was that into football, and I was a good football player. I really was.
Yeah, we all had that dream, didn't we?
Right. Yeah, yes, we did. And I didn't grow like my brothers, and I wrestled to stay in shape and make myself a better football player. That's why I started wrestling. And turns out I ended up not really getting big enough for the NFL technically for the stuff that I wanted to do, playing linebacker. And so, yeah, lo and behold, the wrestling that I merely did to keep myself in shape and be a better football player was what I ended up having to use as a base of training to start, learning all the other stuff for mixed martial arts.
But actually, it probably, well, I don't, not sort of it does it for you, but for me, it makes me feel good when I see when they've done a couple of these different surveys to see what sporting type of a background is really has translated over well, and the sport of MMA and wrestling has really transferred over well in the MMA world. Just for sheer fact that, I mean, you're not allowed to submit people, choke them out, you throw an arm bar, stuff like that, but that work ethic, that ability to break people cardiovascular wise, physically, mentally, that's definitely a big carryover. But I think you see right now where the sport of amateur wrestling is actually one of the strongest sports to have in your foundation for a mixed martial arts career. Other stuff, can be added to it. But if you were a successful amateur wrestler, the odds of you transferring or relating back over into MMA is pretty high.
Yeah, and I think it was a blessing because, again, wrestling, while I loved it, I didn't foresee myself going to the Olympics or anything like that from the time I started wrestling in first, second grade, whatever it was. So, but I did see myself playing in the NFL. So I can remember the growth process of wrestling where, in eighth grade, I thought I was hot shit. I was 32-0 that season and go to a tournament. My buddy was 28-0 or 30-0. And we went together. A parent drove us up there and we went to Waterloo, Iowa to a wrestling tournament during the summer. And his first round draw was a guy named Tara Stevenson from Waterloo. And my first round draw was Johnny Scott from Waterloo. And we hadn't even heard of these guys before. And so anyway, we're wondering who these guys are. That's our first round. And I look at their records and I'm like, okay, these guys are like 40-0. And why are we not seeded better than this? Why are we getting put with these two guys from Waterloo? And we finally found them. They were outside. They were buddies. And they were smoking cigarettes in eighth grade outside the gymnasium. And so my buddy and I go, oh, well, we've got to have better endurance than these clowns. And so he wrestled his guy first, Tara Stevenson, got pinned in 58 seconds in a leg cradle and, got toyed with. And then I got beat by Johnny Scott, something like 16-3. And I thought, okay, I just realized that I don't even know how to wrestle. And it's back to the drawing board. And those things would happen to me where I would go up against guys who were world class and realize, okay, I'm not a world class wrestler. Now and then I could beat those guys, but for the most part, I wasn't that level. And, but it wasn't until, like I said, that I actually focused and actually healed myself from the respiratory disease where I could train correctly and figure things out a little bit. But it's a very humbling experience to get on a wrestling mat with somebody who's that good and just get destroyed.
Yeah, no, wrestling is one of those very humbling sports where, I began a couple of stories where I've been on both ends of the spectrum where I've had, the cheers and the accolades, but then, early on in my career, it was like walking out on the mat knowing that our team wins if Dan Severn does not get pinned, and knowing that I counted every light in that gymnasium dozens of times over to where I'm on my back, bridge, fight, get it back off my back. The guy cross faces me again, puts me right back out. Lets me go just to hit me with the headlock and throw me back down again to where, yeah, I made it through that 6 minutes. I'm a broken individual. The score was so lopsided, he was definitely almost probably triple digits on me, but it was done. But that was before there was ever tech falls and things of that nature. So, but and like I said, being broken. I mean, I just was broken. But the only thing I can say is like, well, he didn't pin me, and our team won. So I've been on both ends. That losing in where they weren't, your team wasn't expecting that much out of you, and then on the other end where it's you regale in the fruits of your labor. So
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Pat,
athletics has that way of kind of just exposing you for what you are at that particular time.
Yes,
Pat,
it does.
you were the first ever UFC welterweight champion. So, what can you describe the significance of that achievement in your career?
You remember back in those days, it was, um, on my way towards the UFC. I think I was 20-1 or 21-1 by the time I got in there. So it was kind of a long road, but I was doing, televised debates with politicians just to keep the sport legal in states that I was, going to compete in. And it was a kind of a stressful time because, you set your sights on a goal and all of a sudden people that seem to be in positions of control and power kind of want to, get all over those dreams. And so the process of getting there was, not just the training and the learning and the conditioning and the bumps and the bruises and healing from injuries. It was, doing a lot of research on other sports, safety facts. Politicians would make the simple statement of, this is just nothing more than dog fighting or, this and that. And that we're seriously concerned that somebody's going to get, hurt or killed. And I would just come back with simple things like, well, if the senator actually cared about the safety of athletes, well, there wouldn't be any Little League baseball. 7 kids die a year from line drives. Between 20 and 40 boxers die per year. Spectators at auto racing events die, from chunks flying off of cars into the crowd. So, this doesn't come down. They have no concern for the safety of anyone.
No, they were getting paid off. They were getting paid off to.
It came down to the fact that it wasn't sanctioned and the athletic commission wasn't getting its cut.
Right.
Yeah.
And it was killing boxing, and boxing was paying that senator.
Yeah, they would actually agree with me at that point. They would say, well, I will agree with Mr. Miletich that there is the financial issues that the state is not taking part in it and in control and things like that. Which for good or bad, that's now obviously long behind us.
Okay, Pat, when did you start your amateur wrestling career? Because I know, like, Iowa, being a product of Iowa is really known for producing a lot of great wrestlers over the various decades. When did you start your actually amateur wrestling career?
I think I was 5 or 6, Dan. It was, and it's funny how I got pushed into it. I was walking to one of the elementary schools. It was a wrestling clinic or tryout or something, and I attended that. Here I am in a white T-shirt, white gym trunks, and knee-high socks and Converse. The old Chuck Taylor canvas basketball shoes back in those days, dude. And so I go there and we learn a few basics. I'm totally clueless, obviously, at 6 years old. And leaving the place, somehow I crossed paths with this big kid who was kind of a bully. And I was kind of adverse to, I didn't really dig the whole bullying thing. I'd been bullied my whole childhood pretty much from having giant brothers and all that other stuff. But so I stood up to this kid, and he put me on my back faster than I could blink an eye and slapped me around a little bit and said this phrase, and he goes, "You're stuck," and gets up off me and walks away. And I was like, well, that wasn't a very pleasant experience. And one of my buddies that went with me said, "That's the middle school wrestling coach's son. That's John McCutcheon." And I went, okay, I'm definitely sticking with wrestling because I don't ever want to have to experience that again.
Yeah. Well, I thought you were going to say something there, Don, or you're just belching.
No, I was just coughing.
No.
Pat, what's the most challenging aspect of your training right now?
You know, training with intensity, but still being smart. You know, in my mid 50s, I don't want to. There's no reason to, you know, get in knockdown, drag out. You know, I know how to fight. It comes down to timing and conditioning.
Right.
So that's kind of really what I'm focused on. But I tell you, where my endurance, and this is for anybody out there listening who's in their, you know, if they're out of state, 30s, 40s, 50s, whatever, something that always brings my conditioning back to where I feel pretty dang good is incline sprints. So 40 yards, I do 5-minute rounds, 5-minute rounds of where you sprint up a hill for 40 yards and then jog back down to the starting line and do that over and over for 5 minutes. Take your rest between rounds and then do it again for 5 rounds. And then also the good old aerodyne, doing 5-minute sprints of aerodynes, 20 seconds on, 10 seconds off, or
I
20
hate
seconds
that.
hard.
I hate that son of a bitch machine, man. I'll tell you what.
Yeah, but I tell you what, Don, if you want to get it back and do that, you know, 3 times a week, along with, you know, just some whatever cardio on the days in between and some lifting, you'll come back incredibly fast. I think that sprints not only essential for young athletes, but especially for guys our age, to get back your fast twitch muscles firing again and get your cardiovascular back fast, where you've got really good, you know, endurance. That's a big one, man. Sprints are a huge one.
Yeah, it's got to take you a long time to warm up and stretch out because so you don't pull a hamstring, right, or a butt or a back muscle.
Yeah, I'll do some warm up stuff, and then, but once you get through the first round and blow your lungs out and your legs get full of blood, it actually gets easier. You know, once you get through that part, just like when we were young, you know, the first 5-minute round of going hard sucked.
Yeah,
that's just the way it was, and then your lungs were stretched out and you were good to go, right?
Yeah. Yeah, but I just gotta be careful about pulling muscles, you know. I mean, it seemed like to begin with, my muscles were tendons were too short for my skeletal frame, you know, and it's like they gotten worse, you know, they gotten shorter over the years.
Yeah, we'll do 40-yard jog, walk back to the starting line, do 5 rounds of that until you can get to where you can start running a little faster, you know, baby steps, right?
Right.
Yeah, that's basically all you're saying there, Pat. Everyone's got to start somewhere. As long as you just, I mean, that's where people they got to look at. They're not in competition with anybody else. They're only in competition with themselves. So yeah, everyone's gonna suck when they start up at the beginning, but knowing that, you know, each week or so, if you can improve a little bit more, you shave up a little bit of time, or your recovery is coming back a little bit quicker. That's what it really boils down to. That's lots of people when they go to the gym, they think that they're, you know, because they have to grab the lighter weights. They can't do as many repetitions. So, you know, a lot of men, I'd say they kind of get a little bit more intimidated to go to the gym. And thus, you don't see a lot of senior citizens unless there is some type of a silver sneaker type of a program that is being run there. But the seniors actually need it more than anyone because of, like some things you said before, just by lifting some weights, it helps to build some more of that muscularity in that, and you know, also doing anything that involves strengthening of the legs in that, because somewhere in the future of a senior, you are going to lose your balance and you are going to fall down, and it's how you fall down is to whether or not you break something. So you're going to lose you're losing calcium out of your musculature. So by lifting weights helps build up a more musculature, and you can also take, you know, whatever type of a um, of an additional you know, supplement on top of that. You know, a lot of women need a little bit more calcium, stuff like that, just because for the fact that they lose calcium on a monthly basis. So
yeah, you know what's and that's where we go back to you know, a lot of people go, oh, I've got arthritis because I guess I'm just getting older or whatever. Well, look, while gravity does take a toll, the years do take a toll depending on what we've done in life. There's a reason that, you know, if we, in the book that I read probably 30 years ago, called Dead Doctors Don't Lie. And that was a really instrumental book for me. And some of the parts that I remember out of there are, you know, that he made he wrote in his book that men in the Himalayan foothills can father children into their 90s, upper 80s, lower 90s, because of the nutrients in the soil that their food has grown, right? So again, we look at Americans and our serious health epidemic, and our nutrients have been, you know, destroyed or just not bioavailable to the plants because of the damage to the soil. Well, we're getting very low levels of nutrients in our bodies to begin with, and then being pounded with those chemicals that cause all the inflammation. So if people just make the adjustments, and I'll just tell people that the key is not just eating right, because it can say organic and it can still have synthetics and everything else in it. That's kind of the way they've done things. But taking products that have antioxidant qualities to them, antioxidants are the substances that remove those things from the body. And when you do that, you tend to be able to have a little better movement, a little more flexibility, better breathing, better endurance, better recovery, you know, all those things that start to happen. And, you know, I've seen a lot of folks that are a lot older, 60s, 70s, and older, who suddenly start working out again because they've cleaned their bodies out of these substances, and they didn't even realize they were capable of doing this stuff. So that's really super important for people to research.
Well, Pat, have you written any books yourself?
The only book that ever came out was Blood in the Cage. That was written actually by John Wertheim, and that has no information in it whatsoever about all the stuff that I was doing back then. I didn't realize how significant it was all the way back then of what I had discovered in terms of healing myself and then creating athletes that could do things endurance-wise that nobody else could do, really. Very few on the planet could do. So that was, you know, I would love to share that information, and I do when I give speeches at, whether it's an agriculture convention or human health and performance gatherings, things like that. Because most people go into grocery stores or the vitamin store and grab stuff off the shelf, not knowing that those vitamins and minerals are actually just synthetics from a laboratory. They're not actually organic, bonded with carbon nutrients that you are actually able to use that are going to benefit you.
Are you trying to say that the hoaxer was selling me some bill of goods right there where he says drink your milk and take your vitamins, you little hulkamaniacs, and say your prayers at night?
Yeah, I think he took some other vitamins, but nonetheless.
Well, I
Yeah.
mean, Pat, at one time, you and Monty Cox, I swear, you guys had to have. I'm trying to think how many champions that you guys had between the two of you, because I think there was a point that they were saying that only one coach could have so many athletes underneath them, and you and Monty Cox had between the two of you, I don't know, I'll say 10 or more different athletes that they were all, you know, and on the top 10 in the world. So, I mean, it was, can you mention it? I mean, do you feel comfortable mentioning any athletes that you worked with at the time, and what were some of their accolades?
You know, I mean, there were you know, that everybody knows about, the Matt Hugheses, Jens Pulvers, Tim Sylvias, you know, all of those, the Rich Franklins, Dave Monet, you know, but there was, I think somebody did the counting, and there was 95 kids that we got into televised careers, 12 world champs, 2 IFL team championships. But I think ultimately it was quite a few. I mean, we had at one time in the room, I think we had 40 guys that were ranked in the top 10 in the world in their respective weight divisions. So it was really a room full of, you didn't get any, you got no easy goes. There was just nobody. If you were having an off night at all, you were going to pay the price. So it was good because there was so many good guys. And you could never get through a week without getting your ass kicked. I can tell you that.
Definitely a very humbling sport. You might have a good day today, but tomorrow it might be something totally different. You got to enjoy it while it's there.
Yeah, 100%.
I mean, you had okay. How many people did you say that came out of there as sports commentators out of that group? You said 100 plus.
No, we had 95 televised athletes. So we put 95 athletes into televised fight careers.
Okay, understood now. Okay, I thought maybe that they somehow spun into doing like either play by play or things of that nature. So now I understand that they actually made it onto television for the career.
Yeah. You know, it was. I think it's fun to tell the story about when Coleman came. He had lost 2 or 3 fights in a row and had dropped out of the top 10. And he called me up and he goes, Miletich, he goes, I'm thinking about coming to train with you. You think that's all right? I got this thing called the Pride Grand Prix. I'm just, want to come out there for a while and train with you guys. And I said, well, Mark, I said, I'd love to have you. I said, look, as long as you do what I tell you to do and we don't have arguments, I'm all about it, bro. I'm all about it. And so he came out and did everything I told him to do. And tell you what, he trained his ass off and then went and won that Pride Grand Prix. And that was pretty cool to see him have that resurgence. But during the training, there was some times where one of my heavyweights was sparring with him on a Saturday morning, and Mark knocked my heavyweight out. He hit my heavyweight, and that heavyweight, Nate Schroeder, who's still to this day a Davenport police officer, and dropped Nate. And Nate looked at me and goes, I'm done, bro. And I looked around the room, and I went, well, I got no more heavyweights. I got nobody to spar with this guy. So I'm going to put the gloves on with him. And so we're going at it. And I think it was 4th round. He hits me with a looping right hand in the temple. And the whole left side of my body, right down the meridian, the center line of my body, went completely numb. And I thought, there's about 20 seconds left in the round. And I might actually get knocked out. I've never been even close to getting knocked out by anybody. But he hit so freaking hard back then. So I started hitting him with right hands just to back him off enough to make it to the end of the round. And luckily, after that, when the bell sounded, he looked at me and goes, all right, I'm good, Miletich. And I was just like, thank God.
What do you think about Mark getting back in the ring to box?
I think good for him, man. He's done some incredible things for himself. And, I'm really paying attention to him. I've had my battles with alcohol, and I just recently had, an issue with that. And I'm back, I'm just handing all my demons over to God and focusing on myself, and focusing on, I teach people how to heal themselves physically, but, I have to work on myself spiritually and mentally. So I'm inspired by what Mark's doing, and, good for him. I think it's amazing. I think it's admirable, and I think it's going to inspire a lot of people by doing what he's doing. So, I hats off to him for doing that.
Yeah.
Okay, but here I'll go to a different issue, but it still involves the UFC to a certain extent. But Dana White bringing the slap boxing. What's your 2 cents on slap boxing, and yay, nay, for it, against it, and if so, why?
Well, I think all 3 of us can agree that we were training very hard to, for the most part, get out of the way of punches, learn how not to get hit, how not to take, abuse, things like that. besides Don's fight in Japan with the Japanese fighter,
Takayama, yes.
we all did a pretty good job of that for the most part. So I don't see the purpose of standing in front of somebody and allowing them to strike you in that level of severity and vulnerability. I don't see it serving a whole lot of purpose artistically or skill set wise. And honestly, I don't know how well any of those are doing. I think there's some people that want, but I think overall it's kind of the devolvement of society that allows these things to. It kind of tells you where we're at. Like over the past 20 years, I'm sure you guys have noticed as well, the number of drivers in the left lane going the speed limit in the passing lane. And the more those numbers grew, the more I knew we were in trouble as a society. And I think slap boxing is kind of indicative and a signal that, well, our society is a little bit sick, you know. So,
well, no, again, Pat, excuse me for interrupting you. I mean, I've watched this before. I happen to be actually in Russia. And I've seen some of it live there, and it's where it kind of came from. Russian bar mentality. It's not exactly what I call astonishing that a sport like this was developed in a bar someplace, and to think of, okay, who can take an open palm swat like that. And I mean, there's some skill to this, knowing how to, when you swing that in there, to hit with more of that big old bony palm portion, and the hit as on that jaw line slash, maybe you can catch a bit of the tempo. I'm not sure what they're aiming towards, but it is rather short lived. And the hard part is, when you have a high profile figure like a Dana White that says that they've taken additional safety factors, there is no safety factors in this sport. I say it because there is no defense. I basically put my big old chin out there, and I'm going to let you have 3 different chances of knocking me out. So there really is no self-defense to it. And I just look at that. We've got a dumb enough world already. Why add to the population? So
yeah, that's good way to explain it.
But for entertainment, oh well, I sit back and watch it. Sure will, and I'll be like, glad it's not me. And then there's some people that have gotten into it to where, are they doing it because of all the wrong reasons? Did they do they need the money now? At one point. I mean, because there was a one point in time that I think Tim Sylvia and Mark Coleman, I thought they were going to do a match against each other, but I had heard about it, but nothing else had materialized from that point in time. I know that at one point Mark wanted to be, I guess they call them head catchers in that sport there as well, but I don't know really where that went to. And he was trying to, Mark was trying to pull me into that. I go, Mark, that's not my cup of tea. I will never be. I'll watch it, I'll make fun of it, but I don't want to be in it.
Right. Yeah. No, and I mean, my goodness, think about it. At least, you guys were good enough wrestlers where if you got in trouble on your feet, a lot of times you could rely on the wrestling to put a guy on his back. That was, part of it. And there's just no option. You just stand there and take the abuse. And I think everybody in that sport is going to get concussed, and it's going to cause, damage. So I don't necessarily see the benefit of it, to say the least.
Yeah. So, well, Mr. Fry, unless you got something really you want to ask there, Pat, I know we've kept them on there for an hour there, and I don't want that. Listen, Pat, did we not cover something you'd like to cover about your career?
I would just say, and if you guys could have your producer tag the videos in, where if people want to find the product, if they've got a garden and they want to grow biologically without chemicals, they can go to soilsavior.com. And then if they want products, antioxidants for improved immune function and athletic performance, endurance, recovery, and overall health, they can go to organicsupersoldier.com.
Are these both your websites?
Yes, those are my products. Those are the businesses that I started in the last few years here.
So soilsavior.com and organicsupersoldiers.com.
Yes, sir.
All right. And if anyone wants to simply just contact you for do you do your own podcast too there, Pat?
I usually do Instagram videos and stuff, so people can follow me at PJ as in Patrick J, PJ Miletich, Miletich.
Okay. Yeah, because I just want to make sure that people, when when this episode airs, stuff like that, any way that you could get any kind of a some more visibility or get some more gigs out of it, that definitely want you to have the opportunity there as well. So again, I like that. That's soil savior. I'm gonna look at a few of these names there, soilsavior.com and organicsupersoldiers.com, because it's being growing up on a farm myself, and watching all the chemicals that were being sprayed, and then seeing the runoff.
Yeah,
No one goes
right.
into the creeks and stuff like that. And then you'd see a few fish floating around, like, gee, that's well, those chemicals didn't affect the fish in a very positive way. So, what's it doing to the actual food itself?
Right, right. So yeah, and the water purification plants aren't purification plants. They're adding things to it, but they're not taking a whole lot out. I can tell you that.
And coming up on October the 14th, Davenport, Iowa, at Cage Aggression. And the Pat Miletich will be taking on Mike Jackson, who basically said he's in roughly his mid-30s, and now you are in your basically mid-50s now. So we'll have old school versus new school, and we shall see who will prevail. And you said that people can get the internet pay-per-view at this.
Yeah, cagedaggression.tv.
Okay. Yeah,
See
there
who
you go.
takes who for a walk.
There you go, Don.
You said that was cageaggression.tv. TV.
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
All right. Well, Don Lessa, again, I don't want to cut you off. So if there's anything else you want to talk about, be my guest. I'm just want to be respectful for Pat's time. I'd like to appreciate Pat for coming on here and giving us a chance to talk with you, and you've had a really phenomenal career. Like I said, I've known you for quite a few years. Have actually been out to your training camp, and I've worked with some of your athletes along with working with you, and like I said, you're a great competitor, but even greater yet, coach, I believe. And you've got a lot that you could to contribute to a lot of different people. And just, the aging population of the United States, if you want to have a little healthier life, a longer and healthier life, look at check out Pat's website, soilsavior.com, organicsupersoldiers.com, and I'm sure there's ways of contacting Pat directly to see how you can get involved with some more of the projects that maybe he's got going. So,
Absolutely.
Pat
I
Miletich,
appreciate
yeah,
Yes, sir.
yeah, thank you very much for your time this evening, and look forward to hearing about the results coming up here on your October 14th event. Wishing them nothing but the best.
Good luck,
I
man.
appreciate it. Hey, you guys need to name this the Dan and Don Show. Dan and Don.
Yeah. I mean,
I don't know.
Donnie and Danny.
good luck, man. Good luck.
All right. Take
Thanks,
care.
guys.
Bye
We'll see you,
bye.
Pat.
All right, bye.
Thank you for watching another episode of Dan and Don's Toxic Masculinity. You better like, subscribe, and share, or I'm going to come to your house.